Montenegro, recognized as the world's youngest country since gaining independence in 2006, occupies a unique position on the global stage. Known for its stunning Adriatic coastline and vibrant culture, the nation is a melting pot of traditions and influences. An embodiment of this open culture can be observed on Montenegro's beaches, where societal norms embrace an unusual level of freedom. This video aims to explore the underlying societal norms and cultural aspects that contribute to this distinctive atmosphere along Montenegro's coastlines. Historical context. Montenegro's journey toward independence is a rich tapestry woven from the threads of various empires, cultures, and civilizations that have swept across the Balkan Peninsula. For much of its history, Montenegro was a part of larger political entities, beginning with the Roman Empire and subsequently falling under the Byzantine Empire. It was also part of medieval Serbian states, and later the Ottoman Empire, from which it gained a level of autonomy in the 16th century. The nation's distinct identity began to crystallize during this period, and it continued to fend off complete Ottoman domination by cultivating a warrior culture. That ethos laid the foundation for Montenegro's fiercely independent spirit, which persists today. The 19th century marked a significant turning point for Montenegro. It was a period of nation-building, driven by the desire for full independence from the Ottoman Empire. The country's leaders, notably Prince Bishop Petar II, Petrović Njegos, and King Nikola I, played instrumental roles in modernizing Montenegro, both politically and socially. Njegos's poetic works and governance provided a cultural and ideological basis for Montenegrin nationalism. As for King Nikola I, his reign saw the country's first constitution, the introduction of a legal system, and the establishment of diplomatic relations with European countries. These efforts set the stage for Montenegro to join the kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes in 1918, which later became Yugoslavia. Montenegro's Yugoslav experience was a mixed bag. While it brought economic development and modernization, it also stifled Montenegrin identity to some extent, subsuming it under a broader Yugoslav identity. The disintegration of Yugoslavia in the 1990s ignited a series of bloody conflicts, but also presented Montenegro with an opportunity to reconsider its national trajectory. Initially allied with Serbia in a rump Yugoslav state, Montenegro began to distance itself by the late 1990s, especially under the leadership of President Milo Đukanović. He introduced economic reforms and initiated a dialogue about the possibility of independence, which culminated in a 2006 referendum. With 55.5% of the vote, Montenegro opted for full independence, and it emerged as the world's youngest country. The impact of this historical journey on Montenegro's culture and openness is multifaceted. Centuries of resistance against external powers fostered a sense of communal unity and a defiantly independent streak. The various empires and cultures that touched Montenegro left their imprint, resulting in a melting pot of influences ranging from Orthodox Christianity to Islamic traditions, from Mediterranean lifestyles to Slavic folklore. This blend of cultures has contributed to a broad-minded perspective, encouraging tolerance and open dialogue among its citizens. Interestingly, Montenegro's young age as an independent country has also played a part in its modern openness. Being the world's youngest country comes with a certain fluidity in social and cultural norms. The country is still in the process of defining itself, and this has created a societal landscape that is somewhat malleable. Consequently, Montenegro is more open to new ideas and cultural shifts, as evidenced by its relaxed beaches and liberal attitudes toward diverse lifestyles. Moreover, Montenegro's European aspirations add another layer to its cultural landscape. Eager to join the European Union, the nation has been consciously aligning its laws and societal norms with European standards, including human rights and individual freedoms. This has further pushed the envelope of openness, as Montenegro seeks to present itself as a progressive, forward-looking country. Montenegro's complex history has been instrumental in shaping its current social fabric and cultural openness. The nation's past paints a portrait of resistance, adaptability, and an unyielding quest for self-determination. It's a past that honors the diversity of influences, from the days of Roman rule to the modern aspiration of European integration. And it's this rich tapestry that sets the stage for the unique blend of freedom and openness that one experiences on Montenegro's idyllic beaches today. Societal norms and culture. In Montenegro, the ethos of individual freedoms is deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness. The Montenegrin perspective on personal liberties traces its roots to a complicated historical tapestry where independence was hard-fought and autonomy deeply valued. It's not surprising, then, that Montenegrins view freedom as not just a right, but almost a cultural obligation, an ethos that permeates social norms, values, and day-to-day life. This cultural disposition allows for a certain latitude in personal choices, including lifestyle and clothing, making the society more accepting and less judgmental about personal preferences. In the realm of clothing and body image, Montenegro's societal attitudes are refreshingly liberal. Here, individuality is respected, and there's a conscious effort to avoid the trappings of stereotypical judgments. The beaches of Montenegro are a microcosm of this larger cultural trend. You'll find a range of beachwear that reflects this open mentality, from bikinis and one-pieces to more modest attire. There's an implicit understanding that the beach is a space for relaxation and self-expression, where societal norms are relaxed and people can genuinely be themselves. The Montenegrin view on body image is also nuanced and leans toward the inclusive. Unlike some Western societies where an ideal body image is heavily promoted, often leading to body dissatisfaction and an array of psychological issues, Montenegro offers a more holistic and compassionate perspective. The focus is not just on physical aesthetics, but also on the overall well-being and happiness of the individual. That's not to say that physical fitness and appearance are not valued. They are, but they're balanced with a more rounded view of what it means to be human. This equilibrium stems from a culture that has been seasoned by multiple influences, from the rugged mountain life that demands robust physical health to Mediterranean ideals of beauty and balance. The youth in Montenegro, like their counterparts globally, are subject to the influences of social media and the globalization of beauty standards. However, the impact is tempered by strong family bonds and community relationships that provide alternative viewpoints and emotional support. Traditional Montenegrin values, which prioritize hospitality, family, and community, often act as counterbalances to the more superficial aspects of modern culture. These cultural markers serve to ground the younger generation in a broader spectrum of values that go beyond just appearance. It's also essential to highlight that Montenegro's cultural dialogue is not static. It is evolving. The country's desire for European integration and the accompanying legislative changes are affecting societal norms. New laws aimed at gender equality, LGBTQ+ rights, and other forms of inclusivity are slowly making their way into the cultural fabric, sparking conversations and sometimes even confrontations between traditional and modern viewpoints. However, what remains consistent is the underlying Montenegrin disposition to uphold individual freedoms, be it in choices related to clothing, body image, or lifestyle. Montenegro's societal norms and culture are deeply influenced by its history of fighting for independence and autonomy. These historical experiences have shaped a collective mindset that values individual freedoms and is open to diversity. When it comes to clothing and body image, the country's beaches serve as an epitome of its liberal attitudes. Whether you're a tourist or a local, you'll find Montenegro's social atmosphere to be one of acceptance and freedom, allowing you to bask not just in the sun, but also in the liberty to be yourself. Legal aspects. In Montenegro, the arena of individual freedoms extends even to the legal frameworks governing public spaces like beaches. The country has a somewhat liberal stance on clothing-optional or naturist beaches, reflecting its broader ethos of personal freedom and autonomy. This openness is underpinned by laws that are generally permissive, with caveats aimed at ensuring public decency and respect for all. While the legal landscape in Montenegro does not explicitly lay down guidelines for clothing-optional beaches in a detailed manner, it does create a space where these kinds of beaches can exist without much hassle. Unlike some countries where public nudity is strictly regulated or prohibited, Montenegro adopts a more flexible approach. There are designated areas, particularly in tourist-heavy regions, where clothing-optional practices are tolerated. These areas are generally well marked, and information about them is made available to the public through various channels, including tourist offices. The designation of these areas often follows local customs and the prevailing cultural norms of the region, which means that there's a level of social acceptance already in place. This works in concert with the legal framework, creating an environment that is generally welcoming of clothing-optional beachgoers. However, it's essential to note that the general leniency does not mean a total lack of regulation. Laws related to public decency and behavior still apply, and inappropriate conduct can attract penalties. The legal system expects a certain level of decorum to be maintained, and actions like lewd behavior, sexual activity, or harassment are not tolerated and are punishable by law. The idea is to strike a balance between individual freedoms and the collective well-being of society. Therefore, while you are free to go without clothes in designated areas, you are also expected to maintain a respectful attitude toward others sharing the space. Given that Montenegro is a country in transition, with aspirations of closer ties to the European Union, its legal frameworks around social issues are subject to change. As of now, there's a dialogue happening around aligning local laws with European norms, especially those related to public decency and individual freedoms. It's a complex dialogue that often pits traditional views against more liberal European attitudes. However, despite these ongoing discussions, the fundamental Montenegrin openness towards individual choice, as it pertains to clothing and personal freedom, is unlikely to change drastically in the near future. An interesting facet of the legal environment around clothing-optional beaches in Montenegro is the role of local governance. Municipalities often have the power to regulate local beaches and may pass bylaws that pertain to dress codes. This means that the legal guidelines can sometimes vary from one region to another, further emphasizing the need for visitors to be informed and respectful of local norms. Even as we talk about the legal guidelines, it's worth noting that social acceptance and legal permission often go hand in hand. The law may create the framework, but it is the people, their beliefs, and their attitudes that bring it to life. In Montenegro, the legal leniency around clothing-optional beaches is bolstered by a society that generally values and respects individual freedoms. It's a mutual relationship that, in many ways, reflects the complex interplay between law, culture, and personal freedoms in the country. While Montenegro's legal system does not provide exhaustive regulations for clothing-optional beaches, it offers enough room for these spaces to exist in harmony with societal norms. The laws are a reflection of the country's broader ethos of balance between individual liberty and public decency, a balance that has been carefully maintained to respect both the cultural history and the evolving identity of Montenegro. Public perception. The freedom to choose whether or not to wear clothing on certain beaches in Montenegro is a subject of both local and international interest. This liberty, cushioned by legal permissiveness and social acceptance, provokes a range of reactions from the community and tourists alike. While we may not have conducted interviews or surveys, one can deduce general attitudes through published reports, articles, and social discourse on this unique aspect of Montenegrin life. Locals generally display a tolerant, if not entirely nonchalant, attitude toward clothing-optional beaches. This acceptance is not just an offshoot of the legal framework, but is deeply rooted in Montenegro's social fabric. The practice does not draw sharp gasps or scandalized whispers. Rather, it's seen as a personal choice that each individual is free to make. This is not to say that every Montenegrin is a frequent visitor to clothing-optional beaches, but the prevalent attitude is one of respectful indifference. People are more concerned about maintaining the natural beauty of these spaces and ensuring that they remain welcoming for everyone, clothed or otherwise. Tourists, on the other hand, come with varying degrees of preconceived notions and expectations. Some arrive specifically for the experience offered by clothing-optional beaches, fueled by a sense of liberty that these spaces promise. For these individuals, the beaches serve as zones of freedom, spaces that allow for self-expression and a break from societal constraints. They revel in the liberty, using the experience as a way to escape the limitations they may feel in their home countries. However, not all tourists share this enthusiasm. Those unaware of the local norms can sometimes express surprise, confusion, or even discomfort upon encountering these beaches. Over the years, tourism authorities have tried to preempt this by providing information to travelers, so they know what to expect. This has helped to some extent, but the spectrum of reactions remains wide. Tourists who come from more conservative backgrounds or societies where public nudity is taboo may find it challenging to reconcile their beliefs with the freedom observed here. Despite these varied perceptions, the local economy benefits from the diversity and openness of its beaches. Businesses, especially those in the tourism sector, appreciate the international crowd these beaches attract. The topic has been covered in travel blogs, social media, and even scholarly articles, often being cited as an example of Montenegro's unique blend of freedom and cultural respect. Both local and tourist perceptions are continuously evolving, influenced by broader changes in global culture and politics. Younger generations, both Montenegrine and international, appear to be even more open to the concept, seeing it as an integral part of a progressive society. They are often the ones pushing the conversation forward, discussing inclusivity, body positivity, and the right to personal freedom in public discourse. The public perception of clothing-optional beaches in Montenegro is as varied as the people who frequent them. While locals generally view them as non-issues, tourists can have a range of reactions from keen interest to mild discomfort. Despite these differences, what remains consistent is the overarching narrative of personal freedom and individual choice. It is a reflection of Montenegro's balanced approach to personal liberties, a balance that has earned it a unique spot on the world stage. Comparison with other countries. Clothing-optional beaches in Montenegro are not an anomaly, but rather part of a global dialogue about public spaces and personal freedom. To understand this within a broader context, it's illuminating to compare Montenegro's approach to that of other European countries and worldwide destinations that also offer such beaches. Starting with France, home to the famous nudist destination Cap d'Agde, the approach is markedly different. While Montenegro tends to allow for clothing-optional beaches as part of a broader acceptance of personal freedom, France has entire communities centered around naturism. This makes for a more organized but also more exclusive experience. French society has largely embraced this, and the concept is highly institutionalized, complete with official memberships and certifications. Spain, with its Mediterranean flair, offers a somewhat similar environment to Montenegro. Locations like Ibiza are known for their relaxed beach policies, but they are often exclusive to particular areas or secluded beaches. Spain's acceptance of clothing-optional beaches tends to vary by region, influenced by local culture and governance. However, Spain's tourist-driven economy and international appeal have made it more accepting of various lifestyle choices, which could be considered parallel to Montenegro's own approach. Germany, on the other hand, is a study in contrast. Public nudity is generally accepted in specific FKK, Freikörperkultur areas, a movement that has historical roots in the German cultural history dating back to the early 20th century. Here, public nudity is more than just a beach activity. It's a lifestyle philosophy advocating for the freeing of the body from societal constraints. The approach is more holistic but can seem somewhat structured to an outsider, in stark contrast to the more laissez-faire attitude observed in Montenegro. Across the Atlantic, the United States presents a complicated picture. While places like California's Black's Beach provide a space for clothing-optional sunbathing, the legal guidelines are often murky and can differ drastically from one jurisdiction to another. Public perception is equally mixed, swinging from liberal acceptance in some communities to strong conservative opposition in others. The American model, so to speak, is one of patchwork policies, a far cry from the more uniform acceptance seen in Montenegro. Then there are destinations like Brazil, where the famed beaches of Rio de Janeiro allow for a wide range of clothing styles but often stop short of full nudity. Brazilian culture is generally open to skimpy beach attire, but societal norms and legal restrictions still uphold certain boundaries. This makes for an interesting middle ground between complete freedom and societal constraints, offering yet another layer to the global discussion on public spaces and personal choices. In Asia, countries like Thailand offer designated nudist resorts rather than public beaches for naturists. It's a contained experience, heavily tailored for tourists and expatriates. This is reflective of a more conservative local culture that tolerates the practice rather than accepting it as a norm. What stands out about Montenegro in this global tapestry is its blend of organic development and legal tolerance. The practice has not been heavily commercialized or institutionalized, making for a very personal and individualized experience. It seems less about making a statement and more about granting a freedom, less about creating exclusive spaces, and more about fostering inclusive ones. The nation offers a unique model that sits somewhere between institutionalized acceptance and underground subculture, reflecting its own complex history and cultural landscape. It is an approach that has proven both intriguing and attractive to locals and tourists alike, making Montenegro a compelling case study in the global dialogue on public spaces, personal freedoms, and societal norms. Benefits and drawbacks. The allowance for clothing-optional beaches in Montenegro is a subject that naturally brings with it a slew of advantages and disadvantages. This dichotomy shapes not only the public's perception, but also has real, tangible impacts on various aspects of society, from tourism to cultural cohesiveness. Starting with the obvious, the benefits extend prominently into the tourism sector. Montenegro's scenic Adriatic coast is already a major tourist draw, and the added freedom on its beaches enhances its allure. For some travelers, the freedom to go clothing optional is not just an added perk, but a deciding factor in choosing a holiday destination. This brings a specialized tourism market to Montenegro, people who might not have considered the country otherwise, contributing to its growing tourism economy. Beyond economic benefits, the allowance for clothing-optional beaches taps into broader issues of personal freedoms and individual autonomy. In a world that's increasingly leaning towards conservatism in response to rapid globalization, the freedom to choose how one enjoys natural spaces is more than a luxury. It's a statement of identity and individualism. In Montenegro, this sense of individual freedom can be seen as an extension of its societal values, demonstrating the country's commitment to upholding personal freedoms. However, it's not all sunshine and liberation. There are drawbacks that must be acknowledged. One glaring issue is the potential for cultural clashes. Montenegro, like any other tourist destination, draws people from diverse cultural backgrounds, not all of whom may be comfortable with the concept of clothing-optional beaches. For some, it could be disconcerting or even seen as disrespectful, potentially leading to misunderstandings that can sour the experience for locals and tourists alike. This cultural tension can sometimes find its way into local communities, where older generations might not fully subscribe to the liberal outlook of their younger counterparts. It's not just an international clash, but an intergenerational one within Montenegro itself, reflecting divisions or differing opinions within families and communities. Moreover, there's the issue of execution. While the law may permit clothing-optional beaches, the infrastructure may not always be in place to support this. Lack of appropriate signage, designated areas, or even basic amenities like public restrooms can create logistical challenges. Without a well-thought-out plan and execution, the idea, however progressive, becomes flawed in its application. Lastly, there's the ever-present risk of exploitation and commercialization. As is the case with any trend that gains traction, there's the danger that what started as a liberating option could turn into a commercialized venture, one that deviates from its original intent and inclusivity. A rise in tourism specifically aimed at this niche market might lead to businesses catering solely to this crowd, creating a kind of exclusivity that could ironically limit the very freedoms it aims to promote. The existence of clothing-optional beaches in Montenegro is a multifaceted issue, steeped in layers of socio-economic and cultural implications. While it offers clear benefits in terms of tourism and personal freedoms, it also presents challenges that cannot be ignored. Balancing these will require thoughtful dialogue and considerate planning, both from authorities and communities involved. In this balancing act lies the future of this intriguing feature of Montenegro's social and cultural landscape.